All right, we are on day 12 of Travel Agency in a Year podcast. My name is Rachel and welcome. We're spending about no more than 20 minutes a day with just tips, tricks, resources, all the fun things to help you build a travel agency that works for your life, not what someone else tells you should be doing. Not that a lot of people do that, but I feel like there's pressure. Let's just build a business that works for your life. All right, today I wanted to talk about crisis protocols and management and how you need to have some sort of system in place should something happen to you because you are self-employed. And also going to relate this to certainty versus uncertainty. There's not going to be any We're not going to talk about doubt, but certainty versus uncertainty. So you can never be 100% certain you will never ever get sick. You will never ever have any kind of family emergency, death in the family. Um, you're never going to be, you can never be fully certain that your internet or power is going to go out due to an natural disaster. You don't know what's going to happen. That is the uncertainty side of being self-employed and being your own boss and being a business owner. So what can you do to sort of have more confidence if and when those things, not even really if, but when these things do happen? And to create that certainty around maintaining your business, not from, we can get into like COVID or 9/11. Like those are big, big things that affected the travel industry and shut it down for a while. That's more of a financial management thing that you need to focus on. I'm talking about things in your life that could affect you having a major disruption in your day-to-day operations and why it's important to have some of this stuff. So you can create some sort of certainty if an emergency should arise by having protocols in place for different levels of emergencies. And it could be as small of an emergency as you have burnt yourself out and you have got to take some time off to rest. That can happen. Especially if you're like, I'm going to do $1 billion in sales all by myself and not hire anybody. And like, don't do that, first of all. But if you do and somehow get there, you're going to probably be like, I need to take a break. And this is different from your PTO or creating your own time off. So what are crisis protocols? There's steps that you would take, obviously, in your business to notify clients or maybe suppliers or anyone that could be affected by you being MIA for a certain period of time, that something has happened and you have got to either deal with your own personal illness or whatever, or deal with a family emergency like a death in the family. There's all sorts of different scenarios here. And what should that entail? So, to help with crisis management, and I have full things like here's everything that you should do in the success circle, but here's some freebie tips for you, just things to consider. And I'm going to tell you a story first that happened to a very good friend of mine over the summer. And then we'll relate it to being a travel advisor. And I don't know what your personal situation is. I don't know if you're married. I don't know if you have children living in the home with you. We're just going to assume it's you all by your big girl or boy self. So first off, over this last summer, at the time of recording this, I had a friend who works in medicine. She works as a nurse, and she had come by my house a few times, and she was like, man, oh man, I have this weird pain. I think it might be kidney stones. It might be a UTI. I don't know what the heck's going on. And I am not a doctor, but I love to pretend to be a doctor. So I was like, well, clearly it's this. I was like, doesn't sound like kidney, but it might, because it was on the front side, not the back side. And I was like, it probably might be like ovarian or something. And she had already gone to the doctor. And they were like, it might just be a really bad UTI. Here's some antibiotics just in case, because they did a urinalysis and there was bacteria in the urine. So they just presumed it was a UTI and moved on. And she had this issue for 11 days. And she went back to the doctor because she's like, it's not getting better. And I had to pick up her daughter from school. Like her older daughter was a high schooler with not quite old enough for a license yet. So I was like, yeah, no problem. I'll put things aside, pick your daughter up from school. And then I can't remember if it was me or her daughter that got the text that she had been diagnosed with a appendicitis, like her appendix had burst. Who knows when it had it burst? And luckily there was like this pocket that had kept all the stuff that could lead to sepsis safe from like penetrating the rest of her body and causing major, major illness. So she ended up having to, have the surgery, be in the hospital, blah, 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 blah. And she was on the road to recovery. I think it took like 4 weeks before she could even go back to work. That was not something that was predictable. That was definitely something that's an uncertainty. And that um, she's she's older, she's over 30, so doctors presume there's no way it could be appendicitis because usually that bursts before 30. So they didn't even think to look at it until she was like, hey, this still isn't working. I've been to the doctor a few times. Okay. So that's the kind of uncertainty I'm referring to with you. Like, I'm not saying like you're going to get sick and have to have surgery, but I'm not saying that you're going to live forever and be perfect. Like, there could be a car accident. And she doesn't work in travel. But what would you do if you were in that situation? If you were that person that was like, you're going to have to be in the hospital for several days. You're going to be on like a morphine drip post-op, pain medication. So you're not going to be like totally sober. And then you're going to have to be on the road to recovery, which our job is very sedentary, honestly. But you have a lot of other things to deal with. So I know if it were me, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I could totally just work from my bed. Old me would say that. Old me would be like, yeah, just give me the laptop and I'll just keep working. Um, but I wouldn't be able to really do as good of a job because I'd be dealing with pain, I'd be dealing with healing, and so on and so forth. So consider some kind of situation like that. If that were to happen, what would happen to your travel agency? Do you have someone that can access your logins and your email, your CRMs? Even if it's just a family member and it's just like printed off, or maybe you have one of those family password accounts where they can use your email and access key and get in and have access to all of your logins. Like, do you have a system like that set up? And if you don't have like a password account manager thing system, like, oh, there's so many of them. One password comes to mind. Do you at least have it somewhere in a safe place in your home, like maybe in a safe or a locked file cabinet, um, so that someone could access that information? Do they have your, and if you don't have this yet, that's fine, but do they have your CPA's contact information, your business attorney's contact information? If they don't, and if it's like a long-term thing, like it's important to have all of the important contacts for everyone in your business. And as your business grows, you're going to want to like add to that list. Like if you hire a social media manager, or if you hire or contract out a virtual assistant, um, can they contact that virtual assistant for you, or can they contact the company that you've contracted them out? Do they have all that information? Um, Anyone else that might be in your team, if you grow it, who's on that team and can they contact them easily? Just things to think about. Not that it's going to definitely happen, but again, we live in a world of uncertainty, and having this stuff kind of in place for when the uncertainty happens, it's going to make things go a lot smoother. And I'll touch on how this could really affect your business in many, many ways. Another thing to consider is, do you have at least one other colleague that anyone in your family can easily contact from like your phone, for example, and say, hey, it's time. We need your help. Or do you know of another advisor that can help? Just to like, imagine if this happened when you had a group of 100 people traveling. Um, and yes, you have all the email automations and set up, and they all have maybe they don't have their travel documents out yet. And you need to still send that out and double check all of that information. And maybe you're not at the point where you have anyone on your team yet. So it's just you. Like, you should have someone that's a travel advisor that you know and trust. That if there is an emergency like that, they can step into your system and they can say, okay, XYZ needs to happen, and I'm going to do this. And first, I'm going to email everyone and introduce myself and say, hey, Jane Smith is in the hospital right now, and I'm helping you help her. Like, I'm helping her help you. And you are going to be contacting me. And obviously, if it's like a big, big thing, you'll want to like compensate that advisor for helping you out. Like, just obviously, like that would be nice of you to do. But do you have all this stuff in place? And this is another reason why you should be very thorough with your CRM and make sure it's up to date with your trip information as it's updated. Now, the CRM that I use Vacation CRM personally. I know everyone loves Turn and talks about Turn. I'm I have a team, we're all used to Vacation CRM. It's been, no, we don't want to switch. So, that being said, you can always update reservations from many of the typical suppliers in Vacation CRM. I'm not sure if it's like that in any other CRM system for travel advisors, but you can update like the length of stay, the room category. It'll pull everything from the supplier into that CRM so your invoice is up to date. Um, any other notes, like if there's room requests in particular that you haven't done yet, like your workflows, like make sure it's kind of all in there. You can typically set up some kind of reminders of tasks that you are supposed to be doing to serve the clients, whether or not it's fully automated. But have that all in place and just make a habit of doing that. Now, the reason why I mention this is if you get a lot of your clients from social media and something were to happen to you, they don't really know you. And I talked about in past episodes how important it is to be consistent in your marketing messaging all the way through your service until they get home from their trip. Like, you've got to have the consistent messaging and level of service. So when something like this happens, even if it's an emergency and it's like against anything, like completely out of your control, there is a chance that it could break the trust of your clients, especially if they don't know you very well, because they don't know if you're telling the truth. So this is another reason why it's important to have this information ready to go. And you might want to consider even like having some email templates ready to go as well. If it's like Uber, like a car wreck, crazy thing happened, and you want to communicate this to someone important to you, near you, like in your neighborhood or in your family, in your household, someone close to you. So if you are in that situation, they know exactly what to do. And you also want to um, make sure that you do have a colleague that's willing to help you in a crisis situation like that. Now, there's other crisis protocols. Like I said, maybe you're in the middle of wave season and you've gotten like 30 new trip requests overnight. Or maybe you had a random video go viral and you got 600 or 700 trip requests overnight. That is another crisis that you need to manage. It's a good one, kind of. It's a lot of work, but it's still a crisis because it's a massive influx of business. So you can think of this um, like a restaurant suddenly gets, okay, I used to work in a lot of restaurants when I was a teenager. and I worked at this place called Steak and Shake, and we would get buses come in from like high school and college basketball and football teams just out of nowhere. They wouldn't even call. And so there'd be like 60 athletic young men just like, I need food now, on top of everything else we had. That was a crisis. We would get through it. We would serve them. But do you have something like that in place? So, in the example of the restaurant, if we were full and people walked in, we'd be like, you're going to have to just come back. Like, we can't serve you right now. We're full. Even if you tried to go through the drive through, the kitchen is backed up. We are full. Do you have something like that if you were to randomly get a massive influx of trip requests in and you're just trying to go through them? Again, you could call on a colleague or maybe someone on your team if you have team members and be like, hey, let's work on this together. But you could also just send an email, like a newsletter out, be like, hey, we've had a major influx in trip requests. We're going to have to get through them. If you want to schedule consultation, I'm shutting off my calendar for appointments for the next 2 weeks. And if you send any trip requests, we will get to them as soon as possible. The estimated hold time, like when you call into a customer service line and everyone else is calling them too, the estimated time for us to get back to you has been changed from whatever it normally is, like 24 hours, 1 business day, whatever, to 5 to 7 business days or whatever you feel like you can reasonably handle. And thank you for working with us. We really appreciate this business. We're working as hard as we can. That is like another crisis protocol that you could get into. And then there are other ones where you're just sick or you're just maybe you get through all those trip requests and you get everyone deposited and you serve all those people and you're like, I need to take 2 days off this week from this. Do you have something in place for that? Can you just this is kind of like your PTO. You could just put it in your email signature. I will be out of office, blah, blah, blah days about a week prior. Like if you're in the thick of wave season and you're like, this is the busiest wave season I've ever had, give yourself like a Thursday, Friday where you're going to be out of office in like 3 weeks. So get through the hump and have that little 4-day weekend that you weren't really planning on because you're going to be working overtime right now. Does that make sense? So that's going to help you maintain your consistency when there is uncertainty, is if you have these like little plans in place for big unexpected life events. And that's going to reassure your clients that you are being honest with them. You are doing the best that you can to serve them, and you are like, life happens. And a lot of people will be much more sympathetic to your situation than if you just went full ghost. When you go full ghost, either from burnout or from just life happening too much, that's when you start to erode the trust between you and your audience. So that is your lesson on crisis, your lesson on crisis protocols. Just something to think about. You can even just make notes. So everything that we talk about in here in the Travel Agency in a Year podcast is just kind of, it's not super urgent for you to get done immediately, just things that you need to consider. And maybe you haven't implemented them yet. Maybe you have, but you're like, oh, I should probably refine that. Just to make sure that you are fully able to essentially just run this business, A, how you want it to be, and B, in a way. So the step from self-employment to entrepreneurship is to be able to hand everything off to someone else and they can replicate exactly what you're doing. So that's, if you want to get to that level, that's great. But even if you don't want to get to that level, having all of these little plans in place for everything that's unexpected is going to leave you much more secure when the uncertainty of life happens, whether it's financially or in a family emergency, natural disaster, um, That's what this episode is all about. And I don't want you to think that you have to have it perfect. This is not about estate planning. This is just about maintaining when there's an emergency. Okay. All right. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for sticking it out. We are not even 10%. We're like 5% through the year. All right. So that is how to remain a little more certain in an uncertain world while you're self employed and building your travel business. If you liked this episode or found it helpful, please click the subscribe button. Yes, I'm doing that plug. Or follow me or share this with someone you know who may not have even considered any of this and they're brand new to the travel world. All right, I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.